Welcome back to The Explainer. So if you, or maybe someone you know, is currently staring down the completely overwhelming, intensely stressful reality of elite college admissions right now, just take a deep breath, okay? Today, we are opening up the black box. We're looking directly at the data, the policies, and the real, behind-the-scenes reality of what schools like Harvard, Stanford, and MIT are actually looking for. We're going to demystify the whole process and hopefully give you back a real sense of control.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap to getting through the chaos today. First, we'll look at the numbers game. Second, the well-rounded myth. Third, the academic hurdle. Fourth, intellectual vitality. And finally, packaging your story.
So let's kick things right off with part one, the admissions numbers game. Right off the bat, we need to establish the incredibly high stakes here and just how intensely competitive the current landscape has gotten. We are seeing a shocking, literally shocking compression trend for the class of 2030. Acceptance rates have plummeted into the low single digits across the board. I mean, look at this. Harvard is sitting around 3%, Stanford at 4%, MIT at 4.6%, and Yale at roughly 5%. Now, to put that into perspective for a second, schools like Harvard and Stanford are pulling these tiny percentages from applicant pools of over 56,000 students. That means for every single student who gets a yes, about 32 are getting a no. It's a numbers game that can feel, well, incredibly daunting. But honestly, understanding the reality of this math is the very first step to making a really smart plan.
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it reframes things. Amid all these terrifying numbers, MIT Admissions offers a really crucial reminder. They say, we admit people, not numbers. And, this is the perfect pivot from cold, terrifying data to the absolute relief of the holistic review process. Yes, the numbers are wild, but the colleges know that. They aren't just running your GPA through some giant calculator, they're actually evaluating your personal context, your environment, and your unique character.
Which brings us perfectly to part two, the well-rounded student myth.
You guys, this is perhaps the single most common and definitely the most exhausting misconception out there about what top-tier colleges actually want. There is a massive, fundamental difference between a well-rounded student and a well-rounded class. You know the well-rounded student, right? They're the ones driving themselves to sheer exhaustion. They're chasing 10 different clubs, playing sports they don't even really like, and logging endless volunteer hours just to look quote-unquote perfect on paper. They think they absolutely have to be the president of the debate team and the varsity quarterback and the lead in the school play. But on the flip side, we have the reality what colleges are actually building, which is a well-rounded class. Admissions officers don't want 2,000 clones of the exact same exhausted, perfect-at-everything applicant. No way. They want a diverse ecosystem of unique experts who can actually teach and inspire each other.
So think of the incoming freshman class like a giant fruit salad. If a college is building the ultimate fruit salad, they simply do not need 2,000 bananas, right? Even if you are literally the absolute best banana in the entire world, if they already have enough bananas, they're going to start looking for a strawberry or a kiwi to balance out the whole mix. The main takeaway here is that you really shouldn't try to game the system by being something you just aren't. Figure out what kind of fruit you naturally are and just be the absolute best version of that.
All right, moving on to part three, clearing the academic hurdle. Of course, while you totally don't need to be perfect at absolutely everything, you do still have to show that you can handle some seriously demanding coursework. There is a baseline screen you've got to pass. Just looking at MIT's admitted students, the middle 50% for SAT scores is sky high, 780 to 800 for math, and 740 to 780 for reading and writing. But, and this is absolutely crucial, here is what you really must understand. A 1,500 plus SAT score or a 3.85 GPA, that merely clears the initial academic screen. It just proves to the university that, hey, you can do the work. It puts your application in the pile to actually be read seriously. But perfect scores alone absolutely do not guarantee admission, not at all. Thousands of students with perfect 4.0s and 1600s get rejected every single year, simply because grades just get you in the door.
That brings us to part 4. Demonstrating genuine intellectual vitality.
So the crucial point is, what is the real differentiator? What actually gets an applicant past that initial academic screen and into the admitted class? Well, Stanford explicitly evaluates what they call intellectual vitality. They define it as a true delight in learning and an enthusiasm for ideas, verified through sustained independent work. They don't just want to see that you got an A in AP Biology, that's great, but they want to see that you love the subject so much that you actually pursued ideas beyond the assignment. They want to see you engaging with knowledge as something that's just worth seeking entirely for its own sake.
To actually prove this vitality, you need to build what admissions experts call a spike.
So, instead of trying to be the best in the world at one broad, totally impossible subject, you find the intersection of two of your genuine passions. For instance, rather than just saying, "Oh, I really like economics," maybe you combine your passion for gender equity and your knowledge of economics to write a gender-neutral economics textbook for your high school. See the difference? You build depth over breadth. You prove your curiosity with tangible external validation.
And the data backs this up beautifully with a massive number, 18%. That is the acceptance rate at Stanford for students from a specific mentorship program who had verifiable, published, independent research. Now contrast that 18% against Stanford's overall 3.68% acceptance rate. It's wild. Doing original research, getting published, or building a high-impact project takes your intellectual vitality from just a simple claim on a piece of paper to undeniable, externally validated evidence. It demonstrably shifts the odds in your favor. All right, on to part 5, packaging your unique story. Now, you've got the grades and you've found your unique spike, but how do you actually show this to the admissions officers? We need to figure out how to translate all of this human element right onto the actual college application materials. A really major part of this relies on your recommendation letters. Most students don't actually realize that counselors often have to evaluate 16 different aspects of a person. 16! So to help them avoid writing just generic, cookie-cutter letters, you need to hand them a deeply personal brag sheet that hits 4 key areas. First, you've got to bring your transcripts to life by explaining exactly why you love a specific subject. Second, discuss outside books you've read to showcase that independent curiosity. Third, explain your achievements, and honestly, explain your failures too. And fourth, make sure to describe your actual work experience. And speaking of work experience, this is absolutely vital. Harvard College actually states, and I quote, "A student can gain a great deal from helping their family with babysitting or working in a restaurant." This completely recontextualizes extracurriculars, guys. It completely shatters the illusion that only expensive elite summer programs matter. Top universities highly value the grit, the responsibility, and the time management it takes to hold down a job at Domino's Pizza or taking care of a younger sibling. Really, do not hide these experiences, you need to highlight them.
And this brilliantly illustrates how you should translate your failures too. It essentially takes 3 steps. First, take a major risk. Second, track your emotional ups and downs in a journal. And third, reflect on those lessons for a powerful personal essay. Let me tell you, keeping a journal of your painful failures and exactly what you learned from them is an absolute goldmine for writing specific, deeply authentic supplemental essays. Colleges want real, self-aware humans who actually know how to grow from setbacks.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this explainer today. So what does this all mean? Well, I want to conclude by leaving you with this slightly provocative question to ask yourself. Am I just trying to game the system for prestige, or does this school actually fit my personal values? If you pursue your genuine passions, embrace your unique fruit for the fruit salad, and just accept that college is really about finding the right environment for you to thrive in, the entire process becomes so much healthier. You take back your agency. Thanks so much for joining me today, and remember, build a story you're actually proud to live.